We have come down to the final episode of the Vince McMahon Docuseries. Episode 6, which is called The Finish. Where we, of course, do get into the lawsuits and the accusations against Vince that more so took place after these interviews. Although we had a few that were shown by dates that were taking place after the accusations happened. Of course, except for Vince, which there was a shot of the empty chair where Vince had sat in for the entire series when it came to that, saying following the accusations that started in 2022, all other interviews with Vince were canceled. And also, how this also, information that I somehow overlooked, gave me a different view on Brock Lesnar's involvement as well in this too. Because there was something in his new contract that I was not aware that was there, which now makes me say, yeah, Brock's definitely not coming back for a long time, if he ever does come back. And also a rant on Bruce Prichard. Because I can't stand Bruce Prichard. And especially what he said in this docuseries towards the end of it. But let's get into and talk about this episode. So before we got to the juiciness of this episode, they did kind of talk about, at the beginning, a few other things. First off, how after the Attitude Era, it was a little, well, actually, no. Before I even get there, they started this off with Vince answering some type of question about how, does he have like multiple brains or something like that? Like, you know, what goes through his mind? And he basically implied that he has different computers. That one he thinks is pretty normal. The other one that's off in another place. And a third one that basically says, you know, is like fun and like weird things in his head. And he basically implied that he thinks about sex in that computer. And it's just kind of just like, okay, that's awkward to say. Which again, if Vince McMahon didn't want to make himself look bad in this documentary, all he had to do was not say a few things. Bruce Prichard, I'm directing that towards you because you claim that this documentary made Vince out to be an asshole. No, it didn't. Vince McMahon said the stuff he said that basically he brought it on himself. So stop sticking up for the man. I know he told a story later on about what Vince did for his wife back in 2000. I can understand that, but you gotta face the facts sometimes here, Bruce. Bruce Prichard, I'll get into this real quickly here. What bothers me a lot about Bruce Prichard is he is literally sticking up for Vince McMahon in every single thing. He sees Vince McMahon through rose-tinted glasses. That he can't do anything wrong. And again, I'll wait till later on, towards the end of the episode. I get why, but at the same time, it's like, there's other people who have had to accept the fact that these people who they looked up to, these people who were once like, who did something big for them, who are like heroes to them, are not always the heroes they say so. So, and I don't know. It just, he just drives me nuts. Because to me, I see him as another Vince McMahon corporate suit, basically, is what I see from Bruce Prichard, which is why I can't stand him. But we'll get into that later. But yeah, already start off with that tone. It's like, Vince, are you like setting yourself up to like literally look bad? And again, that was recorded before any accusations came out, with Vince basically saying that line about how he has multiple computers and one of them saying about fun stuff and saying about, you know, basically implying he has dirty thoughts. But, so we had that start off with. The show starts off with basically saying how, after the Attitude Era and after Stone Cold Steve Austin retired, Vince was struggling to find ways to keep his on-screen character relevant. And that's when they got into, like, the Battle of the Billionaires, where they had an idea where they brought both him and former president and currently running for president again, Donald Trump, got brought in as part of that storyline, where they had someone represent each of them, which I believe was Umaga for Vince McMahon and Bobby Lashley for Donald Trump at WrestleMania 23, I believe it was. And of course, the loser, whoever they're representing, had to shave their head bald. So it could have been Donald Trump or Vince going bald. We all know Donald Trump and Bobby Lashley won that. Vince had to shave his head bald. And they also mentioned how Vince went as far as, because someone pitched the idea of having the Vince McMahon character having a midlife crisis. But instead, Vince went as far as said something like, oh, what if they just kill me? And they had the whole famous limo scene where his limo exploded when he got into it. And they're supposed to play in this idea that Vince had died, which I thought was kind of going a little too far, if I'm being honest. And then apparently that was supposed to lead to, I think it was Mr. Kennedy getting like a mega push to win the world title. But he was going to drop it back to Triple H at WrestleMania 24, something like that. Like, that was the long-term plan. And eventually Vince would come out and reveal his all plan to give Mr. Kennedy, who was supposed to be the illegitimate son, not Hornswoggle, prove that his illegitimate son could do his work. I can't remember what the whole story was. But anyways, that's what transitioned into talking about the Chris Benoit tragedy, which I thought we were going to be getting in last episode. We did get it here. They did address the Chris Benoit tragedy. We all know the story about that, and how it basically, based off all the lawsuits and like everything that was being thrown at WWE, based off of that, it was no accident. He had brain damage. They had Chris Nowinski, I believe his name was, be interviewed, and he was the one who suggested the idea of doing the study on Chris Benoit's brain, which revealed that he had CTE. Because Chris Nowinski had to retire because of a bad concussion, him getting CTE. And back then, of course, as well, concussions weren't taken as seriously. Of course, there was the blurb with Stone Cold Steve Austin saying he did believe in CTE, and he believes that multiple concussions just means that you're weak. That wasn't really the wisest thing to say. Because with, like, different health things, whether it's, like, mental health or physical health, I have always said, especially for mental health, you can't fully put yourself in someone's shoes. Because I still believe everybody who has some type of a mental health problem, their scenario is different. So me saying something like that, I don't believe in CTE or something like that, is kind of insulting in my opinion. Because again, it's just, you can't put yourself in the shoes if you haven't experienced it. That's like when Mark Henry said a few months ago that he doesn't believe Vince McMahon did things he's accused of because I wasn't in the room when it happened. He said that in the thing, which already is kind of like, Mark, come on, man. I thought you knew better than that. But yeah, so that was the whole story of what led to WWE going to PG. And like I said, a couple years ago, when I watched the Dark Side of the Ring Chris Benoit episode, I felt bad for Vince when I saw that and WWE. I lost, that sympathy for them though when I saw the Owen Hart one, because to me I thought, well, no wonder why Vince has had to play it safe all these years because of, all this. But then when I saw the Owen Hart documentary, I'm like, never mind, he's still a scumbag. Yes, what happened with Chris Benoit wasn't his fault. The stuff with the steroid trial and whatnot, Vince never forced anyone to take steroids. So that part does not fall on him. These other accusations, which again, as I keep saying, we can't say they're true, because he hasn't officially been proven guilty, but based off of so many things, and how he even responded to some of the questions in this docuseries, how could you not think this guy is guilty at all whatsoever about those other accusations? But they got into that. They jumped over to when the Undertaker's streak ended and how it was a last-minute decision. Undertaker also voiced, and I was surprised also, we didn't get as much Undertaker interviews as I thought we were going to get in this. Because I know he wasn't the biggest standout star during the Attitude Era. He was still part of the Attitude Era. He still did some things, but he probably more stood out during the Ruthless Aggression Era. But I'm surprised that Undertaker wasn't involved in this as much as he was. But they touched on that, how it was very last minute. And how, of course, Vince had to go to the hospital with him afterwards because he got concussed during the match. And, of course, Vince says something like, I don't think Mark was concussed. I think he was just in shock by me telling him last minute that the streak was going to end, and that was that. I'm like, you're blowing crap you're blowing crap up your ass that you can't even, just like, why are you speaking for that? So again, something else stupid that he said. Is he got a problem with that, Bruce Prichard? You have a problem with that? Anyways, so they touched on that. They didn't really, of course, touch on also how, and again, if this was out of Vince's control, they more so just covered the positives that happened during the PG era. And of course, most of it was like, oh, they started up the WWE network. They were skyrocketing in stocks. They were growing a great social media presence, while trying to hide the fact that their television product still sucked. And just how bad that era was until Vince McMahon retired in 2022. They jumped ship there. They eventually, well, actually, no, I'm sorry, not there yet. We did have, they did talk about Shane coming back in 2016 and how that all unfolded and how that was basically like, a moment of like, closure for Shane, it seemed like. Even though, of course, he eventually would not get the keys to the castle as he had hoped for. He wanted to continue the family business. He didn't receive it. He seemed to have moved on from it, basically, it seemed like. But, of course, that WrestleMania 32 match, even though a lot of people, including myself, don't think it was that great. I can't say it was horrible, but it wasn't that great. Of course, funny, you do see shots backstage of Vincent with Stephanie, and Vince is telling the announcing team what to say. And, yeah, he's telling Michael Cole what to say, yet you see Shane jumping off the cell, and Michael Cole looking at a piece of paper going, oh my gosh, Shane jumped off the cell! And I still remember that, I'm just like, really? And again, poor Michael Cole. I especially with how, when he's finally gotten Vince out of his ear, and how good we've seen him on commentary, it's like you kind of want to just tell him I'm sorry. Although the fact that I still can't take away that his WrestleMania 27 feud with Jerry the King Lawler sucked. But they touch on Shane coming back. And then eventually, well, actually, to transition into the lawsuits, they did ask Vince about retirement. And they asked the wrestlers, because again, back in 2021, do you think Vince will ever retire? Everyone was saying no. I don't think it's happening. Vince said he doesn't respect people who retire. If you retire, you stop growing. If you retire, then just go die. Because, like, what's the point more? Then they finally get into the first round of the accusations, which came out in June of 2022. How Vince McMahon had paid hush money, and I believe it was business expenses too, for an affair he had. He had paid hush money to keep quiet. More accusations of this was coming out by other talents who claimed that Vince had gotten them to sign NDAs and whatnot were coming out. And originally, it was just him stepping down as the CEO. He was still the executive chairman of the board. He still basically was in charge of creative, but he wasn't like the head honcho for like a few weeks. That's also when there was an episode of SmackDown a week or two before he first retired. He came out just to, say welcome to SmackDown, because he was advertised to be showing up on the show, and he said welcome to SmackDown. And they even said that in interviews too. It was basically Vince saying one last F you before he was going to retire. And then a week later, I believe it was not the Go Home show, but the week before before SummerSlam was when Vince announced his retirement on Twitter. Stephanie McMahon came out, and even though it was during a time when even it seemed like her relationship with her father was crumbling. Because remember, that summer, right before Vince retired, Stephanie took a leave of absence. She took a leave of absence from the company. And then she came out and, of course, got the crowd, announced the retirement, and then got the thank you Vince chants, which, at the time, there's no sticking up for, someone like Vince. If Vince indeed did do these things he was accused of, there's no sticking up for him. But of course, you know, if he would have retired and just stayed away and just stayed as the majority shareholder, then okay, I could have at least respected him for, like, you know, stepping aside and just owning up to things. But that's not what happened. No. Because months later, and even a few interviews, I think it was Dave Meltzer and a couple other people were saying they could still see Vince coming back. They mentioned how Vince tried to come back and the board unanimously said no. But that's when it was around Christmas, where in 2022, where Vince basically bullied his way back to the company, saying, as a majority shareholder, I will not sign off on any TV rights deals and such, or saying stuff like, you know, I should be there because I want to sell the company. He just did that to try to get himself back in and get his power back. That's all the reason why he did it. And I still remember just like the developing this, so just like how 2023 started off. Vince came back, he kicked 3 people off the board and put himself and 2 other people back on the board with him. And he was saying stuff like, yeah, I'm happy with what Stephanie and Paul have done with the company and Nick, so I'm not getting involved with that. I'm just back to sell the company. Liar. Liar, absolute liar, because then Stephanie immediately resigns. She didn't go back her leave of absence. She resigned. She was gone. No involvement in the company whatsoever. He then becomes the executive chairman. And then, of course, he still, you know, throws his weight around and hides behind... Oh, okay, they didn't touch on this, but I think the only episode that Vince got, like, involved with in person was the Raw after WrestleMania 39. Remember how bad that episode was? Oh, gosh. Like I said, I literally that week almost pulled the plug on me reviewing WWE content again. Because I was just... It was literally, like I've always said, Vince McMahon just feels like that final boss that you just want to take down, but nothing can stop him. And it just frustrates me beyond belief. Like, all these accusations. The guy literally just wants to toy the hell with all our minds. Yet somehow he always wins. And it just drives me crazy. That, you know, he always seems to find a way around everything. So, yeah, then it turned into, after that, you know, he was calling Triple H to go over the shows and making changes. But, of course, you know, was it as bad? No, but still, Vince was vincing up the shows. Even though Triple H was still the chief content officer, he was basically just Vince's bitch. He basically just sat in the chair and, you know, was just basically doing what Vince wanted, but he was being the one giving the crap for it. But then, of course, they tried to cover up how, you know, there was a dip in quality for the first half of 2023. But, you know, shows were still doing great. Everything else still was, doing great business-wise. Yes, they're putting up some of the best numbers. Yet they did strike the Netflix deal and whatnot. But again, they covered up the fact that the product was dipping in quality because Vince was having his hands put back on it. And it wasn't until when Vince took a leave of absence, they didn't touch on this, but Vince took a leave of absence due to like a back injury mid to late summer of 2023, which obviously showed when the show started to improve. And then when Vince came back from that leave of absence, that's when, and of course, when the sale had happened back in April, right around WrestleMania weekend. And then, of course, the sale closed in September, on September 12th, I believe it was, last year. And shortly afterwards, Ari Emanuel knighted Triple H, basically 99% of creative. So that's when he felt like, okay, he is putting some control on the situation. Vince McMahon was no longer the majority shareholder of the company. But of course, he probably felt he could have still thrown his weight around because he was friends with all these guys. Well, then it all backfired on him because in January of 2024, which, okay, first, a couple nights before, 2 nights I think it was before these allegations came out, was when they interviewed Bruce Prichard. This is where I'll rant on Bruce Prichard here. And obviously this docuseries was, still in effect. He was asked, have you seen a few of the episodes? He goes, yes. It sucks. They're making Vince look like a bad man. He's not an asshole. There's much more to him. And I'm just like, shut up. Jeez, oh man, Bruce, just shut up for once. Seriously, Bruce Prichard is no better than like a Kevin Dunn or anybody else who just bows down and worships Vince McMahon. Okay, here's where I kind of like tried to cool down a little bit, is whenever he mentioned how 24 years ago, his wife had cancer and was given 4 years to live, and he claims Vince was the one who helped her get the care she needed, and now 24 years later, she's still here. And, okay, I sat back and like, I can't crap on a guy completely for, basically saving your wife's life, if that was the case. But let's look at some of the facts here. We've seen even back then Vince was a scumbag. How do we not know, with how little I could trust Vince McMahon as a person, how do we not know he just did that just to make himself look good? I would hope that's not the case. I'm hoping he did that good-heartedly to help Bruce Prichard's wife. But with just how much of a scumbag and how much he, has, how much, even he was a hypocrite when he was upset whenever WCW was beating them in the ratings and then taking his stars. But yet Vince was doing the same thing 10 years earlier with these other promoting companies. Like I said, he was becoming his own worst enemy, and he eventually just fell out of touch. And Bruce Prichard wants to stand there and stick up for Vince McMahon when there's these allegations out there that, again, have not been proven true, but the way Vince behaved and the way Vince acted, you can believe they're true. And instead, he wants to sit there when he has no way to prove that Vince is innocent whatsoever, and just stick for the guy and saying, you guys are making me an asshole. It's like, did they tell Vince to say that line about how, I didn't do what I did to Rita Chatterton, but even if I did, it's 5 years past statute of limitations, so it's too late to charge me anyways? Am I the idiot who also said that the TV-14 product and what he was doing to Trish Stratus and Sable and all of them was family friendly? Or he said the line of we're all human. Chris was nuts. That's the only reason why he did what he did. But it's like, he had health problems, but it's like, don't try to defend the fact that it was excusable for what he did. He said a bunch of stupid crap in this docuseries that, obviously, it's put out there. It's an interview. If he didn't want it to be said, he could have told them, don't put this in there. He could have said that. He could have said that. And that's stuff why he tried to buy back the documentary, and he was going to just terminate it, but of course they didn't. It was too late. It was too late. So Bruce Prichard wants to just stick up for Vince McMahon every 2 seconds, fine. But it just makes me lose a ton more respect for him, because all he literally does is just kisses Vince McMahon's ass and does whatever the heck Vince McMahon says. I'm sorry. He drives me nuts. That's why I get mad when he's in these documentaries talking about these guys' successes, or the Bray Wyatt documentary, because he was basically right there with Vince and agreeing with Vince, and everything that's talked about in those docuseries that he's involved with goes completely opposite of what he truly is. He basically was one of Vince's right-hand men who would do anything Vince told him to do. And I'm sorry, it drove me crazy. It drives me nuts. That part when he came out there, he started whining about how this documentary made Vince out to be an asshole. I'm like, shut up. Shut up, because he could have kept his mouth shut about certain things and not said certain things to make himself look bad. He brought it on himself. This is what he signed up for. Like I said, I at first didn't want to watch this series because I was afraid that it was going to be Vince trying to expose somebody else. Vince exposed himself in this docuseries. They also talked about this. They talked about the Ashley Massaro and how during a Tribute to the Troops episode in 2006, I believe it was, she accused someone of abusing her during a trip to the troops. Someone who was posing as a military doctor. WWE swept it underneath the rug. They didn't believe her. Years later, Ashley Massaro takes her own life. Obviously, that probably had some type of impact on it because you didn't investigate in it. I thought there was something else before I get on to what happened with the Janel Grant allegations. I don't think so. If I remember, I'll come back to it. But yeah, like I said, just one reason why I just can't. Another person besides Vince I can't stand in the industry is definitely Bruce Prichard. I can't stand the guy. I'm sorry, but we do get to, of course, this past January when the allegations of the Janel Grant lawsuit came out, going detailed, showing text messages saying that she was being pawned off to other wrestlers. Vince was using toys that were named after wrestlers. It's just disgusting. This man is a monster. And Bruce Prichard claims he's not? Bruce! Come on, man! And then, of course, this was a big eye-opener for me. Because for the past couple months, and for a while now, I've been saying WWE should bring back Brock Lesnar. All he did was he just saw photos and said, I like what I saw. That is the impression I got originally. But then, they mentioned when they're reading over stuff in the lawsuit that apparently, besides because Vince used, the story is that Vince apparently used these photos of Janel Grant to re-sign a superstar in 2021, which was in fact revealed to be Brock Lesnar. And this is the part I didn't know. And this is the part where I said, okay, yeah, Brock definitely cannot be coming back anytime soon. Because in the contract, Vince put in there apparently something about, okay, if you like what you saw, you could get more of that if you sign this deal. And Brock signed the deal and came back. This is the same man who married Sable. And he is coming back because he agreed to this bribe that Vince apparently gave him of seeing more content that Vince is using and just abusing people and threatening their jobs with and whatnot. And of course, the thing is too is the moment these allegations happen, Vince ran, and he just, because when it happened this time, he resigned, and he sold all of his stock. So now he definitely cannot come back. So much so now that he's apparently trying to start up another entertainment company, I got no interest in it whatsoever. Who the heck's going to watch it? Who the heck's going to take any interest in it, knowing he's being investigated by the federal government? And of course, this lawsuit, because apparently they said the Janel Grant lawsuit is paused until after the feds finish investigating him. And by the way, I do remember the other thing I wanted to mention. There was also apparently a story back in 2006 at a tanning salon. Vince tried showing explicit photos to one of the people who worked there, and he tried to make advances on them. And they basically implied that was kind of the inspiration for the story with Psycho Mickey, as they kind of made it seem like as well. Oh yeah, I also forgot to mention too, back where they were briefly talking about the PG era, even though they didn't go deep in it, they talked about the women's evolution, or revolution, whichever one it is. Even though that was all Stephanie and not Vince at all whatsoever. Because Vince obviously wanted to punish any women he couldn't control. But yeah, of course, Vince McMahon does indeed resign. He is still, being investigated today by the feds. Like I said, I have no reason to not think Vince is innocent from this. If you would present yourself on camera better, or handle these situations better, be more mature about it, then yes, maybe I could make the argument that Vince McMahon is innocent. I'm sorry. Everything he did that was shown he did in this docuseries. Everything that all these scandals, again, besides the steroid trial, the steroid stuff and the stuff with Chris Benoit, I'm not holding him to any of that. That was not his fault. But all these scandals, booking yourself to have mistresses constantly, all this other stuff he did, punishing people on TV, insulting our audience. How could I not believe you are a scumbag that could have done all this? I'm sorry. Like I said, I think he will be found guilty. I'm not, of course, praying for it to be happening. Well, I'm at least hoping for whoever is guilty in this whole situation does receive the proper justice. And if it is Vince McMahon, then he deserves a justice. If Janel Grant was lying this whole time, she deserves a justice. But again, I can believe Vince McMahon is capable of what he's been accused of. And like I said, someone like a Bruce Prichard who stands up for him, it's just like, you're as equally of a scumbag because you are defending this guy for everything. Heck, I just watched an episode of SVU recently, an old episode, where Elliot had to arrest like a mentor to him, this one guy who wanted to be an astronaut, for being the one who committed the crime. Elliot, when he realized he was the criminal, didn't hesitate. Like, Bruce Prichard, like, you can't be defending this guy from the beginning to end, even if he's guilty. Like, all these other wrestlers who have spoken up saying that, Vince did do this. Yes, I get this. Vince would not be here if it wasn't for... If it wasn't... If all these people wouldn't be here if it was for Vince McMahon. I get that. But let's face the facts. The guy who got you here is also the same guy who may be guilty of all these crimes. And you can't defend a guy like that. You can't. Of course, also, it ends with this very awkward question of, like, what legacy has Vince McMahon left? And the only person that was able to answer was Tony Atlas. Everybody was like, I don't know. Tony basically said, the best promoter of all time. Vince even said there wasn't really much of a legacy he felt either way either. And then the show ends. And, of course, it says, again, how... about what I said about the Janel Grant investigation, how the feds are still investigating Vince, and also how Brock Lesnar has left no comments about any of these accusations at this time as well. But like I said, when I saw that thing where Brock had basically agreed, had a clause in his contract, for his new contract, saying that he would get more of what he saw from whatever Vince sent of Janel Grant, that's when I'm like, yeah, Brock's not coming back anytime soon. Now I don't think Brock Lesnar should be coming back anytime soon. Or at all, if in fact all of this is true. But we did it, guys. I made it through the entire Vince McMahon docuseries. I watched all 6 episodes. And like I said, I don't regret watching it. My fears totally diminished. This obviously just proved and just eased our minds. Are we crazy for thinking Vince McMahon is as much of a scumbag as it can seem like it? Like I said, yes, this exposed Vince more, but also face the facts too that he could have not said some of this stuff. He could have defended himself better. Again, like when you have a guy who basically brings up the statute of limitations, you know that guy looks into stuff to protect himself. How on earth could you say something like that and think you're innocent? Haha, they can't get me now, though, even if it was true. It's like, that's you just rubbing in their faces that, you got me, but you can't fully get me yet. Ah, man. But that's going to do it, guys. Again, thank you for watching this entire docuseries. If you did watch it all, please leave hashtag #IWatchItAll down in the comment section below. Leave your thoughts about any of the episodes throughout this whole series. And, of course, make sure to watch all the episodes if you haven't done so yet. Make sure, guys, as always, to slap a like on the video and subscribe for more content on my channel. You may follow me on Twitter as well at The Club of Demand 93. You may also follow me on TikTok and on Instagram at The Club of Demand 1993. And until then, guys, I'm checking out. I'll catch you guys all later. I may soon start to review the 24 specials. I've always wanted to review those WWE 24 special docuseries. I may start start reviewing those soon, maybe. We'll see what happens. Because this was fun. I do enjoy these, like, wrestling documentaries, like these whole behind-the-scenes stuff. So I've been wanting to do that for years. Maybe I'll try to get started with that soon. But we'll see. Again, depending on, my schedule or whatnot, since the next couple months are going to be kind of nuts. But that's going to do it, guys. I'll catch you guys all later. Have a great rest of your Sunday. And do not forget, in order to be superior to the man, you've got to be the man. And for I am the man himself. And that is not just an opinion, my friends. That is a fact of life. Yeah!